Hey everyone, looks like we're a nice, small, intimate group here. I was just saying to Jean-Francois, I really appreciate questions as well as any tips that you individually have. I like the knowledge sharing of camp, so it's great to have people jump in as they have better ideas and better ways of doing things, or just additional links and things like that. But feel free to jump in with questions in the chat or raise your hand, and we can coordinate unmuting folks for questions. Hopefully you see my beautiful screen with my WordPress training and my lovely, technically my housemate's cat Pearl, relaxing by the fire there. And thanks so much for coming out to the last session of the day. I know, depending on your time zone, that this might not be a great time, or maybe it's the perfect time. Maybe you are already relaxing for the evening and you just want to focus on WordPress. I will try to keep the energy up, although I admit to 4 p.m. Pacific time not being my best time for energy. And then hopefully folks will join for the virtual happy hour after we spend some time playing with Gutenberg. By way of a quick introduction, I am Tori Lewis, and I'm the Director of Projects at Fibonacci Web Studio. As I said, please do ask questions in the chat and via hand raise, and I'll rely on Jean-Francois, my trusty moderator, to coordinate those so that I can answer them while we're in the moment. And as I said, one of my favorite parts about camp is the community knowledge sharing. So if you have relevant tips or links to share, please do that as well, in the same way that you're doing questions via chat or via hand raise, because we can all benefit from your knowledge. I'm definitely, I've been working in WordPress for many years, but I never considered myself quite an expert or the pro, despite the fact that technically I am a pro because I get paid to do it. But there's always more to learn. And also, I'm much more comfortable when the session is collaborative, so please don't hesitate to ask questions. I'm also happy to talk at you if we've all hit the afternoon slump, or at least afternoon here in California. If questions come up after the session, feel free to find me on LinkedIn or Twitter at Tori Lewis Writes, and I'd be happy to talk more about Gutenberg, WordPress, or anything else that you want to talk about. Today, I'm really going to focus on giving you some tools for using and understanding the Gutenberg editor in WordPress. And whether you're coming from Drupal, classic WordPress, or a different content management system, or you're just new to the web ecosystem, Gutenberg I've found to be a tough nut to crack for a lot of content editors. So I want to start with just what is Gutenberg? Why are we talking about it? So Gutenberg is a page builder, and it's built now into the out-of-the-box WordPress installation. So I've had a lot of clients who were on classic WordPress installations that all of a sudden, their site got upgraded and Gutenberg got installed, and they were like, I don't know how to edit my pages anymore. I don't know what I'm doing. Or, oh my gosh, there are so many options. I'm totally overwhelmed. So if you're familiar with Johann Gutenberg, that's where the name comes from. And he invented the printing press with movable type. So when I'm thinking about Gutenberg, the editor, is also founded on sort of small blocks of movable content. I don't know if that's a helpful analogy for a lot of computer science people. I was an English major, so it's a helpful analogy for me, but it might not be for everyone. And this is a big transition for folks who are used to using fields in, say, Drupal or an old classic WordPress editor. Content now has a lot of flexibility. If you've ever used another page builder plugin, you'll know that that flexibility comes with really great things, but also can be really stressful. And that's true whether you're an experienced site owner or you're a new content editor. I've been working with WordPress since 2010, and I was first a content editor. As I mentioned, I was an English major, so I first really focused on content. I later became a site owner, and now I'm a project manager, site builder, and developer. I work both with WordPress and with Drupal, so I'm familiar with how folks sort of react when they're transitioning between the two, as well as WordPress itself. I've been through a lot of iterations of page builders, including external plugins. The one that we used a lot was Beaver Builder. And now the built-in Gutenberg editor, which really is a layout page builder. So today I want to give a short tour of some of the functionality of the Gutenberg editor, some tips on how to actually use it, and some signposts for those pitfalls that are inherent in page builders and how you might try to avoid them. So I'm going to cover how to use the layout builder. We're actually going to look at it together. I give a caveat that this is sort of, they always say don't give a live demo with with real real live code because something might break. So if something breaks, it's okay. We're on a training site, so that's not a big deal, but bear with me. And then I'm also going to walk through sort of the logistics of the layout builder. So the document versus block tabs, all the different types of blocks. I won't go into huge detail on every single one, but if people are curious about specific capabilities, we can go into that. I will also go into some conversion issues, because this is where I find a lot of people who were in classic WordPress sites get stuck. So converting from old WordPress entries, but also converting between block types. Once you've created a block, whether you can convert it to a different type of block. And I will also share some things that I find really exciting about the Gutenberg editor that are maybe hidden features or just features that you didn't think about. And I especially invite people to share their favorite Gutenberg features, so we can see what those might look like. Great. So first, what does the layout builder look like? What does Gutenberg look like? So to get to Gutenberg, if you're familiar with WordPress at all, or if you can read this toolbar across the top of my screen, edit page is how you get to the Gutenberg editor. When I click edit page, you will see I've already collapsed this menu on the left-hand side. A lot of folks will have this open. I find that collapsing this menu just gives me more room to work with the Gutenberg editor. This right here is sort of the foundation of Gutenberg right in the middle of my screen. You see those individual blocks of content that I had on that public page. You see how they're blocked out here on the left. And then over here on the right, you have your settings tab. This is also collapsible. So if you really want a lot of room to work with Gutenberg, or you're someone who gets distracted by other things happening on the screen at the same time, you can definitely collapse that side menu. If you have done that and you now need it back, you can click right here on this little gear wheel in the upper right, and that'll bring that settings tab back. I've had clients call me in a panic and say that they can't find their document tab, and it can be really frustrating to be in that situation where you're like, it was just there. So this settings icon in the top right is definitely a pro tip. Also here on the right-hand side, you see that I'm currently in my document settings. And what that means is that's really settings for the entire page. So you have your publishing settings, you have your revisions if you want to see earlier versions of the content, you have your permalink, your featured image, discussion, and page attributes. So that's really when you're thinking about the document as a whole. Now, once I click into a block, let's say I want to remove the period from this caption, you'll notice that this side menu has changed now to the block tab. This is also a question I get a lot, is once people are actually editing their site and they're like, shoot, I lost my publishing settings. I don't know how to get to my publishing settings in Gutenberg. All you need to do is click up here and click on the document, and you get back to those document settings. Oftentimes, those are things you're looking at the very end of your content editing experience. So it's nice that they sort of go away, but knowing how to get back there is really important. And then under the block tab, you'll notice that now there's no block selected, and that's because I had switched back to the full document mode. So if I want to get back to those block settings, I click right here. Okay, so that's the document versus block tabs. Now I'm going to get into the blocks themselves. There are several ways in Gutenberg to add new blocks. This is something that I find a lot of people struggle with, and that is partially because Gutenberg is built for a lot of different use cases and a lot of different workflows. You will have to find, and this is part of the the flexibility is great and the flexibility is bad. There's not just one way to do things in Gutenberg. You'll have to find the workflow that works best for you. So first, up here in the upper left, I have a plus sign and I can add a block here. I can also choose to add a block right in line with where I want it. If I know I want it right above this list, I can click add block. I can also, when I'm in the list, I can decide to add a block before or after. It's really helpful for people who are sort of, I guess, people who used to play with Legos a lot when they were kids. The insert before and after is really nice if you are sort of that visual spatial thinker, as well as if you're a more linear thinker. So just know that there are multiple ways to get there, and you will find the way that you find most convenient for you. Another way to insert a new block is to just hit enter after the existing block. Now that will insert a new paragraph block by default. As I said before, there are many different blocks in Gutenberg. The most common is the paragraph block. That is literally what it sounds like. You see, I'm creating a paragraph block here. I'll spend a little bit of time talking through the block settings of the paragraph block because I think it's most common. The easiest way to create a new paragraph block is by hitting enter, although you can always add from up here and click a paragraph block. Once I've created a paragraph block, I have a WYSIWYG toolbar right above that paragraph block. Now, if you're familiar with the old classic WordPress editor, or you work in Drupal and you have a lot of body fields with complex WYSIWYG editors, you will notice that this is a very simplified version of a WYSIWYG editor. You don't have a lot of options here. And the reason for that is there are a lot of different block types that will give you the options that you need. So for instance, you might expect to see here a headings menu wherein you could say which heading this paragraph is. Instead of that, there is a heading block type, and that's how you would use that. And you saw that I just quickly converted from heading to, or from paragraph to heading. I'm going to convert back to paragraph. I do have my bold, my italic, and my link. One thing about this link field that drives me a little bit wild is that if you don't click this apply button, it will not apply your link. I have found myself many, and I am very familiar with WordPress, but I found myself many times be like, I inserted the link, and then I click off and do something else, and I'm like, deep breath. Don't forget to click the apply button. And it does not yell at you when you don't click that apply button saying you are not saving your changes. So it's something to be aware of. Although this is one of those tips that when I give it, I know that you're still going to accidentally do it yourself. I'm just trying to prevent that from creating a lot of frustration. Know that it's a really common issue. Here, I do have some additional rich text controls, but not a lot. Again, a lot of the things that you might want to do with that WYSIWYG toolbar are actually controlled by different block types or by these block settings. In here, I have more options, which again, I can hide the block settings. That takes that away. As I said before, there are many different ways to do things in Gutenberg because I can also click this X to hide my block settings. They're really trying to cover their basis in a lot of ways. I can insert before. If I want something that looks almost exactly like this but slightly different, I can duplicate. I will get into reusable blocks a little bit later, but I can also remove block if I'm like, this paragraph is bad, I don't like it. So if I go back to my block settings, you'll see that it has a short description of what the block is and what it does. If you are playing around on a site, it can be sometimes helpful to just sort of add a bunch of different blocks and see what comes up here and just be like, oh, I didn't consider that we might want a pull quote, or oh, I didn't consider how headings functioned. You also have a text settings option, and that's specific to paragraph. This part will show different sort of settings based on the rich content that you are working with. Now, as I get into these settings, this is where I'm going to signpost a major pitfall with the Gutenberg editor. So you'll see here that font size, I can select, I can make this really big. Sometimes that's a really helpful thing to do within the context of, let's say you have a nice magazine article and you're trying to vary your type. But this is not a substitute for headings. So keeping in mind accessibility and the fact that semantic structure is really important, you want to make sure that you're not relying on this instead of headings. The other thing here is that because you can actually customize this, you can have it be 47 pixels large. If you are working with multiple content editors on the same site, you want to have really clear guidelines on how you're using these text settings. So that one person isn't doing intro text in, 47-point font and someone else is using 46-point font. So you want to have really clear guidelines on how you're using these if you want to use them at all. You also have color settings here. I can create a background color and then I can change the text color. You'll notice that if the color combination is not accessible, I get a little thing telling me that the color combination is difficult to read. However, it won't stop me from going forward with the color combination. I can still save it out. So you have to be really aware of this. Again, this is a giant pitfall. As you might imagine, content editors can create random orange text on one page and random blue text on another page. I show you these because they're there, but I really recommend against, especially if you have multiple people with their hands on the site, using these settings to control color. There's another option here, which is to actually put CSS classes in the theme that allow you to say, we want a breakout box that has a black background and white text. And right here under the Advanced tab, you have the ability to put additional CSS classes. So if I had defined breakout as a CSS class, then it would automatically resize and have the same beautiful background across the site. So I do recommend when you're trying to play with some of those more complicated things, if you have a larger site with more than one person editing it, that you really handle a lot of the formatting in the template as opposed to directly in here, because you're going to get some wonky stuff going on sometimes. Do we have any questions so far? Great.
So far, so good.
Great. Thanks, Irina. Okay, so I'm going to get into some additional block types because paragraphs are not the only thing we put on the internet anymore. I don't know that they ever were. I will call out too, there is a way to edit this as HTML. So you'll see now that the font size and the class that I added that doesn't have anything related to it because I haven't changed the template are added there. I really recommend, again, against living in this HTML, but I want to show it in case you have to, especially if you're copying and pasting from other sites and you're having weird formatting issues. You might want to go into the HTML to be able to clean up some of that weird formatting. But I remember when I built my first website in like 2004 and I built it all in HTML. We are lucky to not have to live in those days anymore. So let's continue living in the world of graphic user interfaces. So when you're going to add a new block, and as I said, there are many different ways to add a new block. The first thing that will come up is your most used. I've had a lot of content editors not realize that there are more blocks than these first 9, not realizing that there's a scrolling bar on the right-hand side. There are a lot of blocks in out-of-the-box Gutenberg. This most used is actually really, really helpful though, because it is dynamic. So you'll have, the default I think is paragraph, image, heading, list, or something like that. But once you actually start using your site, this will get better and better and more helpful for you. If you are working on a site where you're often having videos, like the whole site is embedded videos, video will pop up to be that first one in the upper left, which is really helpful, especially if you're using blocks that aren't super common or aren't perhaps logically grouped under these groupings. It's really helpful to have your content editors be able to see what they're actually using most frequently up here. And that happens out of the box. You don't have to configure anything special so that it's personalized like that. So in the, when you're going to add a new block, there are a couple of different categories here. I'm going to start with layout elements because I like to think of layout elements as sort of like, they're the shelves and you put things on the shelves. So when you're using a layout element, you're often selecting a layout element to then put additional blocks inside of it. So if I'm gonna add a new layout element, the one I like to work with the most because I find it most common is columns. So I'm gonna add a columns and you'll see that now I have two lovely columns that are both paragraphs. And I know that because I have my text cursor here and the start writing or type blank to choose a new block. As I said before, there are so many ways to create new blocks in Gutenberg. You will have to find your best way of doing that. Now, this default opens with 2 columns. I really want 3 columns. If I go to block settings, it's already in the paragraph. If I want to actually deal with the column block, what I need to do is click here on the outside of that column so that it knows I don't want to click into the individual paragraphs. I know that's a little bit wonky, so hopefully you're following my cursor and understanding what I mean. If I click here, it's gonna give me the settings for the paragraph. And if I click out here, that's when it gives me the settings for out here. That's where it gives me the settings for the column. So I wanna click right here on this piece. Now, in the column settings, I have the ability to add up to 6 columns. I'm going to go with 3 because that's better. And then again, I have the ability to add advanced additional CSS classes. So if you are defining a lot of CSS in your template, every block type has the ability under advanced to add additional CSS classes. Again, this is a matter of training content editors so that they know what classes are available and they know what you want to use. If you want the columns to appear the exact same on every single page, you don't need to worry about having an individual CSS class that you're applying to each page. You can just define how columns look. Now, once I've created these columns, now I have the ability to add blocks within this layout element. That's why I think about the layout elements as a shelf, and then I'm putting my cereal in it, and then I'm putting my peanut butter in it. And clearly I'm very hungry because it's 4 p.m. So I'm gonna add here an image block. And once I add an image block, you'll see that I have the ability to add an image in a couple of different ways. I'm going to go ahead and upload. And then I'm going to select this image. And now it's appearing in that block. Now you'll notice that the block settings have changed in the right-hand side. The first one is the most important one, which is the alternate text field. And so I'm not going to totally get into accessibility because there are so many people that have done so many better trainings on that. But I want to call out that in Gutenberg, there are things that are trying to nudge you in the direction of accessibility, but it's not going to do the work for you. It's not going to yell at you if you don't put alternate text in. It's not going to tell you to not make this giant and make it a header instead. So you do have to be somewhat thoughtful about how you're using it, but there are a lot of accessibility features that are built in. So cat flying by fire. We have the ability to change the image sizes, whether I want to go with a default size that's available out of the box or whether I want to do it custom. I really like this option and people have a really hard time finding it sometimes. So this defaults this defaults to linking to nothing, which is how most images on the web operate, is they're just images. You can link to the media file or to the attachment page, but what I find people really wanting to use but not knowing where to find it is the custom URL. So for instance, if I had added a logo to our site, I could link to Fibonacci Web Studio. And I can make that open up in a new tab if I'd like. There's a lot of research online as to whether or not you should open in a new tab or open in a new window or not do any of that stuff. I will let you do that research on your own. And then there are CSS classes for the link as well. And, you know, link refer. And then, again, there's additional CSS classes. These are applying to the image. These link CSS class is applying to the link. X out of that. There are, so I'm going to go back to add a new, okay. I already clicked that. So I'm going to go back to adding a new block. So I've gone through layout elements kind of briefly. They all pretty much operate the same way as columns do. So I'm not going to walk through all the different ways you can lay out your page. I want to also call out here with the layout elements piece that there are a lot of plugins that actually extend Gutenberg and WordPress. So they will give you additional block types. So if you have way more robust needs in terms of layouts than just columns, you can install a new plugin that will integrate with Gutenberg and give you some additional layout elements that you might need. I do recommend, though, playing with the ones that are available here first, the ones that are available out of the box first, because I find that if you install a lot of plugins and you have a lot of block types, your content editors can get really confused about what to use when. So again, the flexibility and extensibility is beautiful, but sometimes limiting can be really helpful. Common blocks are, as described, common blocks. These are really just blocks of straightforward content. So we have the paragraph, we have the image, we have the heading, list, video, gallery, quote, audio, cover, and file. So these will operate in much the way that you might expect them to. You also have the formatting options. The one that I'm going to call out, these are in some ways between a layout element and a common block. They're less common than common blocks, but they're more similar to those sort of like actual true blocks of content than the layout elements are. I will talk more about the classic one here in a second. There are also widgets. So if you're familiar with WordPress, there are a lot of widgets available. And so you can embed these directly into your content as opposed to going into the widget graphical user interface and embedding them that direction. This is really helpful because in the past, when you wanted to use a widget on a specific page as opposed to site-wide, there were a couple, for me, too many steps to make that happen. And now it's really, really easy to just embed a widget on one page in one specific spot. Speaking of embedding, the next one is my absolute favorite part of Gutenberg, which is the embeds feature. There are so many options for embedding external content into Gutenberg. And these work really nicely. I will show you an example with Twitter because this makes things way easier when you're working with external content. Oh, well, it would if it worked, right? That's why we don't do live demos. I'm just gonna go to Twitter. I think it's yelling at me because I did not copy it. I do not have the HTTPS. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to paste it in here. There we go. And embed. And now the magic has really happened and the Twitter feed is embedded right there in the post. There are a lot of options for embedding, as I was showing before. This is why I really recommend before adding a plugin that you pour over what's already here, because adding a plugin to do an embed code when there are so many available can be really common. So now I'm going to get into reusable blocks. These are more similar to like blocks in Drupal than sort of anything else in the WordPress infrastructure. And so I'm going to go here and I'm going to add this Twitter feed to reusable blocks. And I'm going to call it Tori's Twitter. And once I've saved this, now when I go to add a block, I can go to reusable blocks and I see Tori's Twitter. And I can then add that on any page throughout my site. Now, you'll see that now there are no block settings. And that's because this is really designed to be a reusable block that I'm reusing in exactly the same way each way. If I do eventually have to change it, let's say I change my Twitter username or something, I can edit right here and I can change the block. However, if I edit this block, it will change in every place on the site. So that is something really to keep in mind as folks are sort of being introduced as content editors, is when you want them to edit reusable blocks and when you don't. I've seen people do this in Drupal too, where they try to edit a block on one page thinking that that message is going to be specific to that page, and then it proliferates throughout the site and they're like, oh my gosh. So something to keep in mind. And then I can remove this from reusable blocks if I don't think anyone needs my Twitter page on every account. I'm going to quickly go over the classic editor because I think that this is a really important point. I'm going to insert after. I'm going to, if you are really attached to the classic WordPress editor, you can still have it. You can have it and it's beautiful and you can be happy. And you have lots of paragraphs. And let's say you also have a cat, because you love cats. And this is often what you'll see if you're transitioning from your old WordPress site into a WordPress site with the Gutenberg editor. You'll open it up and you'll see your Gutenberg or your classic editor, and you want to move to Gutenberg. So what you can do is in the upper right, in the more options, you have convert to blocks. So theoretically, you could manage all of your content here in the classic editor where you feel comfortable, and then convert to blocks, and it will automatically convert those into paragraphs and image blocks. I don't recommend doing that, but if you do have something that is in the classic editor already, you can convert it to blocks really easily so that you're able to manipulate that content more easily. And then once you've converted it to blocks, you'll see the power of blocks in that I can easily move things up and down and all around. Converting between block types is another conversion that you might want to do. So if I click here, I can, not there, click here, I can transform it into another block type. You'll notice that I can't transform it to any block type. There's a limited number of blocks, and that's because obviously like text doesn't convert into an image really straightforwardly. So they've made some intelligent decisions about how you can convert from one to another. But usually you'll be able to find, often I find people having to convert from paragraphs to headings and vice versa, because they've put something in a paragraph and then they're like, oh shoot, that needs to be a heading. So that's very easy to do. And now I'm going to stop talking because I think I've gone through all of the things I wanted to make sure I covered. And now I want to open up for questions because we have 15 minutes left.
Anybody has a question? Yeah, Rachel, go ahead.
Hi, so just wondering, you'd mentioned that it's not going to really yell at you if it's not necessarily completely accessible. So there's a site, I forget where it is, but you can plug your website into it and then it does tell you if it's compliant with the standards that are put in place. Would a Gutenberg site work the same way where it'll tell you this is not accessible, that is not accessible, or would it kind of ignore the problems because it's not? I guess what I'm asking is, does it read the source code or does it treat it like every other site? Sorry if these are...
No, you can certainly run your WordPress Gutenberg site through an external site checker to make sure that you're doing those things. There are some accessibility features built into the Gutenberg platform, but it doesn't have everything, and it's certainly not going to tell you that you need to turn something into an H2 or that that you don't have alternative text. It offers the option of alternative text, but it doesn't have any checks that you're actually doing that. So I always recommend like site checkers and other accessibility tips and tools, of which I think there's maybe a session right before this or a session at the same time as this covering accessibility, but there are certainly a lot of them out there.
Would you say that they're kind of operating under the assumption that at this level you would know something about accessibility, or?
They're certainly operating under the assumption that it's sort of on, the onus is on you. They're giving you the tool. I mean, I'm definitely projecting here probably, and mind reading, but I think they're giving you the tools, and then the onus is on you to make sure that you're implementing the standards, especially because depending on what your website is doing and who it's working for, there are different levels of accessibility standards and needs. And so there's not really a great way to create a blanket. I mean, I've even seen this with alternative text where I work on a site that, they're like, we need to require alternate text. And then it's like, well, but you don't need alternate text if your images are purely decorative. And then the site users just get really frustrated with having to type alternative text because there's a pretty picture of a flower.
Right.
So it's walking that line again between like flexibility and needing to have content standards. And I really just generally think that if you're using a page builder, because you can't build in quite as much like help text and things like that for your content editors that you can in, say, Drupal, as a result of that, it's really important to make sure that you have somewhere where your content editors can see these are the standards that we're following, and here's how you can do it.
Gotcha. Thank you, Tori.
Does anyone have anything that drives them a little batty around Gutenberg, or any pitfalls that they've run into, or any things that they're like, oh my gosh, that's so cool, I can't believe Gutenberg can do that, WordPress could never do that before?
Well, I'd like to chime in and say that there are some huge advantages in using Gutenberg, and there are also huge disadvantages in using Gutenberg. And it really depends on what you're trying to achieve and who are your content editors. So I don't know if you want to elaborate on that or first answer the other questions.
And no, I'm happy to elaborate on that. I do think it really does come down to content editors. And I think that this has been a problem since before the days of Gutenberg, working on a lot of sites wherein content editors were so frustrated with the classic WordPress editor not allowing them to have any control over layout, but then installing Beaver Builder and having people be totally overwhelmed with all of the buttons everywhere, and then, frustrated with themselves for not knowing what to do and frustrated with themselves for breaking things. And so I do think that making sure that content editors are trained is really important. And then I also think it's really important to have standards, like to say, we don't use a 6-column layout on this site because it doesn't make sense, and making those restrictions. I see a comment in chat asking to show us how you would customize the settings for text, i.e. body or heading, so they can be applied consistently. And I will say that I cannot show you that because the way that we do that is through CSS, and I am not a coder. So I recommend making those changes on the template level, as opposed to having content editors actually do it themselves. So the way that I do that is I boss my developers around and ask them to add additional CSS classes to our template.
That's awesome.
I have a question. I noticed that sometimes the biggest hurdle to move to Gutenberg is when you already have a theme in place, on a website in place, that the theme might not play well with Gutenberg. It's hard. So you might upgrade to the latest WordPress that has Gutenberg in place, but you keep it with a classic editor because you don't want to mess with the theme. I noticed you use a theme that I'm familiar with, Lagunita, and I was wondering if this particular theme lended itself well to the Gutenberg editor, and what other theme have you noticed that do not work well with Gutenberg?
That's a really good question, and I'm gonna go ahead and invoke my director of project status and ask my friendly colleague Irina Zaks to talk about themes and Gutenberg, because I think she'll have some good insight there.
Hi, everyone. let me find my developer's hat, and because CSS is my true love for many years, I can talk a little bit about challenges of merging different things in WordPress all together. So Tori, if you click on view page, everyone can see that this is actually indeed Lagunitas theme that was used on lots of sites. And the new WordPress, new Stanford WordPress theme is also compatible with Gutenberg. However, there are some things that you can't predict because when you start adding this pink and green and teal and all the other things, you're basically giving up control altogether. And if you are working with people who know HTML and understand CSS, then they are at great advantage because they can customize lots of things. But if you're giving it to someone who is not quite sure what the whole front-end development is, you might end up with interesting big green buttons and text that is completely offset. That said, it applies not only to Gutenberg, but with some other things. To answer another question is, can you show us how you would customize the setting for text so they can be applied consistently? You would click on the standard WordPress customize button, and this is where it doesn't really matter what do you use for the backend. At the bottom, you have additional CSS, and here I really needed to be able to see current text with a larger font, and I just added tag font size 18. If we change it here to 26, then you
or 128 if you
right.
want to
So
be
you can see that it will immediately propagate throughout the site. The challenge here would be, though, that if you are not sure how all the other styles are configured on top of your body, like for example, menu is completely off because now it is the larger size font is popping in the places where you don't expect it. So if you don't want to publish it, you just close the window without publishing and you're back to square one. Thank you.
Beautiful. I'm glad I had you on this call with me so I could tap you, Irina. This is exactly how project management works, by the way. Does anyone have anything else that they want to ask or want to mention about their experience in Gutenberg or WordPress or today, or do we all just want to happy hour or what else do we want to talk about?